Let's do this. Okay. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما. Salam alaikum. Welcome to the Conscious Ramadan Workshop. The Conscious Ramadan Workshop. I'm going to begin, I think. My wife stepped into the room, but then she stepped out, so I think everything's okay. Okay, I'm going to begin now. Conscious Ramadan Workshop. So what is this whole thing about? Well, we're going to cover a few things in the next hour and a half. The very first thing we're going to do is look at the purpose, the rewards, and the outcome of Ramadan. This is things we probably all already know. We probably all have heard and might need a reminder because it's been at least a year since you will have heard a lot of these hadith and Quran verses, but we're just going to do a quick recap of them so that we get on the same page. Then we're going to look at the three levels of fasting. So this is something that Imam Abu Hamid al-Ghazali, Hujjat al-Islam, the proof of Islam, Imam al-Ghazali outlined very clearly in his book Ihya Ulumuddin, the revival of the religious sciences, the book of fasting. By the way, it's now available in English, and it's a really good translation done by a company called Fons Vitae. They're doing all of these books, and they're all worth reading. And I would especially, every Ramadan, for the last few years, actually, I've reread this book. And it's the book of charity and the book of fasting of Imam al-Ghazali's Revival of the Religious Sciences. Read the bit on fasting. But we're going to do a recap here. Obviously, I'm going to reference the books as we go through, but the most important thing is that you're here now and just let it soak in. So we'll look at the three levels of fasting because a lot of the ideas I'm going to share with you are about ways that you can upgrade your fast and gain far more benefit from the hard work you're going to be doing anyway. So the way I see it, if you're going to be doing 95% of the hard work, you might as well get all of the possible benefits instead of putting in lots of hard work but not getting all the benefits. So it doesn't take any more effort to do a higher level fast than it does to do a lower level fast. You're fasting anyway, you're hungry anyway. Let's see how high we can go. Then we'll look at the one prayer method. This is a very useful, powerful way to think about the dua that you make during Ramadan, and we'll do a deep dive into that. And then I'm going to share with you a few methods of implementing all these things, including the belly shrinking fast. Oh yeah, that's exactly what it says on the tin. We should not be putting on weight during Ramadan. We should be losing fat. There's a reason the Prophet ﷺ and all the companions were thin and strong, and it's because of the way they ate. Okay, so we're going to look at that a little bit. Then we'll look at the digital detox fast. So the belly shrinking fast, the digital detox fast, which is a way that you can reclaim your attention and your free time and your energy by putting your smartphone away. And then we'll look at the Quran focused fast, how it is that we can actually achieve all of our Quran goals during Ramadan. And then before we wrap up, we will look at the perfect Ramadan routine, how to create your perfect Ramadan routine. And we're going to aim to do this starting right now. So let's begin. The purpose, rewards, and the outcome of the fasting of Ramadan. So all of us probably know this already. We probably are reminded of it every Ramadan, in every khutbah, I was in the mosque just now, and this verse was recited. And every reminder or talk or Islamic lecture, or anything that happens during Ramadan, you're going to hear this verse. And the beautiful thing about that is if you listen carefully and you hear it over and over again, you can actually memorize the verse very easily. I don't think I ever sat down to learn this verse. It's just you hear it so often. Okay, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. This is in Surah Baqarah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. Fasting is written for you, literally written for you, prescribed for you, given to you, as it was given to those before you, in order that you may become conscious, in order that you may become more conscious. That's why we're here. That's why we do this. The whole point of Ramadan is to become more conscious. It's become more aware, more present to the fact of Allah's constant presence. That's why we're doing this whole thing. The question is, how does it work? How does fasting make you more conscious? And there's a very particular mechanism that we're going to look through over the next few minutes. Before we get into that, let's read some hadith, right? Let's look at some of the things that the Prophet ﷺ, just to kind of remind ourselves what this whole thing is about. And you know what? I'm going to stop the screen share for a minute and dive in. There are so many beautiful sayings from the Prophet, peace and blessings upon him, about the reward that we're hopefully all about to get, right? So the Prophet said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, fasting is half of sabr, of resilience. And resilience is half of faith. And Al-Ghazali concludes, therefore, fasting is at least a quarter of faith. And the Quran says, and this is why the Prophet ﷺ tells us that Allah says that every good deed is rewarded 10-fold to 700-fold, except fasting. Fasting is from me, and I reward it personally. Allah says in the Quran, the patient will be, the resilient will be given their reward without account. Those who are resilient, those who are steadfast, those who have sabr will be given a reward without count. And so Al-Ghazali says, well, the Prophet said fasting is half of patience, half of sabr. Therefore, what's half of infinity? What's half of endless reward? Still endless reward, right? So the Prophet, peace and blessings upon him, says that Allah says, the Prophet, peace and blessings upon him, says, by him who holds my soul in his hand, the foul breath from a fasting person's mouth is sweeter to God than the scent of musk. And Allah says, he's given up his desires, his food, his drink for my sake, and I will reward him for it personally. Right? Heaven has a gate called Rayyan, which none shall enter except for those who fasted. And one of my teachers said, you know, in this world, there are certain places, there are certain private places where not everyone can get in. Unless you're a celebrity, you can't get into this super special club, right? And he said, you know what? It's exactly the same in Jannah. In heaven, in paradise, it's exactly the same. You might be in paradise. In the afterlife, you might be in paradise. And as we know, if you're in a lower level, you can't visit people in higher levels, but people in higher levels may come down and visit you, right? But he also said, look, there are certain doors. There is a door that only people who pray duha will be entered through that door. And there's a door, a gateway, a private club in paradise that nobody's getting in except for those who fasted. Okay, so the idea here, and that one, this hadith says that gate is called Rayyan. Heaven has a gate called Rayyan. None will enter it except for those who fasted. And the other day, I was giving a reminder in my home here. We have a dhikr gathering every month, and and I was saying that even my nephew, whose name is Rayyan, won't necessarily get in unless he actually does his fasting, right? For the one who fasts, there's a twofold. The Prophet ﷺ said, this is beautiful. This is beautiful. And we're going to connect to this a little bit later on as we look at fasting strategies. But for the one who fasts, there's a twofold happiness. The happiness he has on breaking his fast and the happiness he shall have on meeting his Lord. And the scholars say, what could be greater than meeting your Lord and knowing that you spent days fasting purely for the sake of God? Also, the sleep of a fasting person is worship. When the month of Ramadan arrives, the gates of heaven are opened, the gates of hell are closed, the devils are chained, and a caller calls out, O you who desire goodness, come forward, and any who desire evil, turn back. And there is a verse in the 58th hizb of the Quran, in the last surah, just before Surah Jinn, just before Surah Am, Yatasa'alun, there's a verse that says, Surah 69, it's written here. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, eat and drink in satisfaction for what you did in days past, right? It's Allah's talking to somebody in paradise saying, eat and drink plentifully for what you did in days past. And the scholars say what you did in days past here refers to fasting, because you refrained from food and drink in your life. So now eat and drink in abundance in paradise. Allah boasts of, so we hear all of these beautiful hadiths. For the one who fasts, the Prophet ﷺ said that Allah says, "Oh my angels, look at my servant. He's given up his desires and his sensual delights, his food and his drink, all for my sake." Another Quran verse, "And no soul knows what will be hidden for them for comfort of their eyes as a reward for what they used to do." And again, it's another place where the scholars say what they used to do means fasting. Okay, so all of this to say, we're in for a treat. We're going to do something that is really relatively easy, but it's the fast track and the easy track to paradise. To not just paradise, but reward without, you cannot conceive of the reward that you get for fasting, right? You recite a letter of the Quran and you get 10 good deeds, but you fast, it can't be quantified like that. It's not even 700, it's not 7,000, it's not 70,000. It's innumerable. And they say that, look, fasting is something that with prayer, you can see someone doing it. With Hajj, you can see someone doing it. With the Shahada, someone says it publicly when they're becoming Muslim, usually, right? With zakat, there's a physical transaction that happens. But when someone's fasting, you can't see what they're doing. I could be fasting right now, and you wouldn't know it unless I broke my fast in front of you. Alhamdulillah, it's Friday. I'm not fasting. I'm good. I'm just psychologically preparing myself this morning. But that's the idea. It's like this is something only Allah sees. And this is why it's so strongly bound with consciousness, which is an internal thing that only Allah sees, right? So people are often talk about taqwa, and it's translated in lots of different ways. And if any of you have read my book, Inside the Soul of Islam, as you know, I like to really think about how, very carefully, how we translate a word in the Quran into English, because oftentimes a slight mistranslation or even a good translation that's overused can put the wrong idea in somebody's mind. And so oftentimes with taqwa, it's God-fearing, fear of God, to be, or even God-conscious, which is much closer, okay, to the real meaning. But taqwa really is consciousness. When we say conscious Ramadan, we really are saying we want a Ramadan that is filled with taqwa. The purpose of this month, as the Quran says, is to upgrade your level of consciousness. And the secret is when your level of consciousness upgrades, it doesn't really go back down. And I'll explain what I mean by that. We're not talking about iman, which fluctuates radically, right? We're not talking about moment by moment. We're talking about your level of understanding, your level of connection with Allah, which comes through understanding, right? In other words, when you have an insight about how close Allah is to you, that insight is going to has the potential to change the rest of your life. I know people who they had woke up one day and they had one insight. Actually, a lot of them, this happens during Ramadan, oftentimes, right? But they have one insight that they're not going to drink again. And then they never do. I know somebody who was listening to the Quran for Busy People podcast, had a realization. It was something about hearing the fact that feeling comes from thought in the moment, which is something that I teach a lot to all my coaching clients. He heard it, he heard something in it, and he quit drugs, he quit cigarettes, he quit alcohol on the spot, and later, he actually also read Inside the Soul of Islam and then became Muslim, and then, mashallah, and never went back to any of it. How does that happen? It happens through insight. It no longer makes sense to a person to do what they used to do, right? And Ramadan is the best time to put yourself in a position where you have the opportunity to have tremendous insight. So this is our goal. This is our goal. We're doing Ramadan and we're aiming to not only get the rewards that everybody will be getting, inshallah, but also to go a level deeper and see, can we actually fulfill the purpose for which we're really doing this, which is to increase our consciousness. Okay, so I have a lot to cover. I've been talking way too much about this one slide. The Prophet ﷺ said, so Aisha, the Prophet, peace and blessings upon him, said to Aisha, continue knocking on heaven's door. And Aisha radiallahu anha said, how do you knock on heaven's door? The Prophet said, through hunger and thirst. So instead of running away from hunger and thirst, a fasting person is in a great position, because every time you feel hungry, you know you're being rewarded by Allah. Every time you feel thirsty, that's you knocking on heaven's door, right? And this little reframe, right, in psychology, we call it a reframe. But this reframe is tremendously powerful, and it's the reason why no one ever breaks their fast, right? It's very rare during a fard fast. It's very rare that a person breaks it intentionally, deliberately, out of just desire. It's very, very rare. And for lots of reasons, not least of which is if you do intentionally, deliberately, just it's the middle of the day in Ramadan, you are fasting, and then you're like, I'm just going to go and eat a sandwich. In fact, while I'm at it, I might as well eat a pork sandwich. If you go and do that, you've got to make up for it afterwards. You actually need to do 60 days of consecutive fasting to make up for one fast broken like that, if it was a fard fast in Ramadan. So there's lots of reasons why people don't, but the key is it's a decision that you make one time. And the thing I want to leave you with here is taqwa. This concept is an internal, it's invisible, and it's about your state of mind. It's about you just think of it as consciousness itself. So taqwa equals consciousness, equals presence, equals an awareness of Allah's presence. They're all related. And now we're going to look at the three, now we're going to look at the three levels of fasting. So there are three levels of fasting that Al-Ghazali points out in this book, Ihya Ulumuddin. And he says, the first level is just for the general Muslim population, and it's just you're following the fard elements of fasting, of acceptable physical fasting. In other words, you don't eat, you don't drink, you don't have sex, you don't smoke, you don't take anything into your body. You're just fasting. You're keeping the fast as we understand it. Now, even this level will increase your consciousness to some extent, because you will have, in a fasting day, maybe a dozen times during the day where you'll feel hungry and you'll be inclined to want to eat something, but you won't eat. Or you'll feel thirsty, your tongue will feel a bit dry, and you won't drink. And every time that happens, reminder, Allah's watching. Reminder, I'm doing this for Allah. Reminder that this is how the mechanism works. You have an opportunity. Now, here's the thing. Not everybody does this. Not everybody does this. But it's quite likely if you fast every day for 30 days with the intention that you're going to increase your consciousness, the invitation I want to make for you, and the invitation that Allah makes to all of us, is while you're fasting, as you notice the fast, right? You're a little bit more tired than you usually would be because you didn't have your mid-morning coffee, or whatever the case may be. When you notice something's going on physically, immediately bring Allah to mind. Your consciousness increases automatically. So that's level one. But level one is nothing. It's not nothing, it's fun. I mean, you'll still get eternal, endless reward. It's with Allah, but we can go higher. How do you go higher? Level two is you fast from more than just food. You fast with all of the inroads to the heart. You fast with your eyes. You fast with your tongue, with your ears, with your stomach. How do you fast with your stomach? It's the way that you open your fast. It's done very consciously, intentionally. You spend a few minutes doing dua before you open the fast. You have one date and a sip of water, or 3 dates and a sip of water, and then you pray, and then you come back. It's like you slow everything down. You don't overeat. We'll talk more about how to do this logistically later. But this is the second big thing, and just to give you an idea, if you ever do this as an experiment, on an average day, when you're fasting, how many opportunities are there to not eat and drink? Well, there'll be a few on an average day. How many opportunities are there during a fasting day to guard your gaze? Well, the answer is it depends if you have one of these. If you have one of these and you're on it like 8 hours a day, then there's probably hundreds of opportunities to guard your gaze. Just making the intention that I'm fasting today, as well as doing the fard fast, I'm also going to do the Sunnah fast. I'm going to guard my eyes. I'm also going to guard my tongue. How many, like, think about how much more radically your consciousness increases if before you speak, you pause and make sure that what you're going to say, like, what you're going to say is truthful and kind and loving every time and necessary. How much more conscious would you be, right? They have, it would almost be easier to be completely silent than to be truly conscious about everything you say, right? And if you ever speak to anybody who's done Vipassana meditation, where they go and they spend 10 days in complete silence, it's a hard thing to do, right? But what's equally challenging is to be truly conscious as you speak. The Quran says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu taqallah. There's that word again, taqwa. Be conscious of Allah, taqallah, wa qulu qawlan sadida, and use and speak words that are straight, that are clear, that are truthful. He will rectify your affairs and forgive your sins. So fast with the tongue, fast with the ears, right? Really, the higher level we're looking at here is to start challenging our addiction to digital entertainment. And that the same as your tongue. You're still using the same part of your brain to figure out what you want to say. So that's the other big thing. All right, next up, the highest level of fasting. And this is where it gets really interesting, is to fast from having your attention on anything other than Allah. Is to fast from everything but Allah. And Al-Ghazali says, this is the fast of the muqarrabun, as it says in Surah Waqi'ah, the people who are closest to Allah. This is the fast of the real saints and the Gnostics, the people who really know Allah and are really close to Allah, is to literally spend the entire day with nothing but Allah on your mind, which is to say, to have a quiet mind the whole day, in quiet, beautiful, splendid, swimming in the ocean of meditation of Allah's presence for the whole day. And you can do things like read Quran and recite Quran to accelerate that and to go even deeper into it. But that's the ultimate fast. The three higher level fasting methods are designed to increase the consciousness level and enjoyment of your fast and ultimately create a lasting, you know what, let me just share my screen here, and create a lasting transformation. So this is the idea. All of this is designed to create a real lasting transformation. That's the point of this whole thing. It's not just an exercise you're doing. So the three higher level fasting methods are designed to increase. So the three methods I'm about to show you are designed to increase your level of consciousness, your enjoyment of the fast, and to create a lasting transformation that actually improves the quality of your life. You can fast the regular way, and you can do level 1. But really what I'm inviting you to is level 2, maybe /3, but at least level 2, by doing the three methods I'm going to share. But before we get into that, there's something I promised to share with you, which I'm going to do now, which is to share the one prayer method. What is the one prayer method? Because let's face it, Ramadan, best time ever. Best time ever for a believing Muslim to manifest, right? I'm a coach. I'm a life coach. All about manifestation, all about presence and gratitude, and then manifesting your dreams, manifesting your goals. Great. Let's do it during Ramadan. How do you do it? Well, the best times to pray, as you may already know, between the adhan and iqamah, before a prayer, after the card prayer that was auto-corrected from fard, right? Apparently, Keynote doesn't know what fard is. So after the card prayer, the fard prayer, before breaking a fast, there's a very special time. Any prayer you make before opening the fast, so this is before iftar, right? And then, of course, all of the nights of Ramadan, especially the last 10. But if you really have a big goal that you're trying to achieve or a big change you want to make that you've wanted to make for a long time, I would go for every night in Ramadan, you make the same prayer. Now, of course, you can and you should pray for all of your loved ones and for everything that you want in life. However, sometimes because people don't take a few minutes even to slow down and think about what do I truly want? What's really missing in my life? What would make a big difference, even just in the dunya? What would make a big difference to the quality of my life? Now, Allah knows your desires, your thoughts, your innermost secrets. Allah knows everything you want anyway. But but you first and foremost talk to Allah about it before you talk to anyone else about it. First and foremost, ask Allah for it, right? So, because some people get into a trap where there are two traps. One is that we have thoughtless prayers because we didn't really give much attention to pay much attention to the prayers that we're making, the actual du'as, the things we're asking from God. And the more dispersed your prayers are, the less focused you are and the less benefit you'll gain, and the less you'll notice if a prayer actually got answered, right? If you make 100 prayers in Ramadan and one of them gets answered after Ramadan, you might not connect the dots that Allah literally just answered your prayer, right? You might not even remember that you made the prayer. This happens a lot. A lot of times your prayers are actually manifesting and coming true you're getting exactly what you asked for, but you made the prayer 6 months ago or 3 years ago and you forgot that you even asked for it. And every now and then you're like, oh, I remember doing dua for this. Every once in a while that happens, right? Well, check it out. So that's one trap, is we have too many prayers and our focus is dispersed and we even forget about them. But the other trap here is that we kind of say, well, Allah knows what I want, so he'll just give it to me without me even asking. Sure, Allah does know what you want, but Allah invites you to ask him, right? It's an invitation. It's a form of worship, and it's a way of developing intimacy with your Lord. Think about it, the Prophet, peace and blessings upon him, who was in the cave of Hira before receiving revelation. He went there to retreat. What was he doing? He was meditating, but he was also doing abundant dua, right? It's like one of the most intimate forms of connecting with Allah. So not only do I recommend you do it and do it a lot and ask for all your prayers, and take a little bit of time right now to think through, what do you want to ask Allah to make a reality in your life? The one prayer method, which I'm going to share right now, is really just a personal transformation method. It's a way of asking Allah to make your dreams happen, because Allah is the only one who can, right? Allah literally is the only one who can. He may make it look as if it happened through means, asbab, but really Allah is the one making it happen. So here's how you do the one prayer method. And I say the one prayer method because what I want you to do is reflect on the biggest change that you want to see happen in your life that will make the biggest impact on your life, and then make that the central focus of your dua during Ramadan. So you can ask all your other prayers as well, but we want this to be like the central focus, okay? For example, you may want to, when you start doing a dua, you may want to make it the first thing you asked for after sending peace and blessings upon the Prophet Muhammad. Make it be the first thing you ask for, make it be the central thing you ask for, and the last thing you ask for. So we're talking about putting massive emphasis on one particular dua, right? And do this in all the dua sessions. And ideally, whatever this prayer is, repeat it every night during Ramadan. After Taraweeh, before you go to bed, if you wake up before in the hour of Sahar, the hour before Fajr, that's a great time to do dua as well. So during these times, ask Allah for the same thing. Or if you're doing extra prayers like Taraweeh or Tahajjud, hopefully, I'm using a lot of Arabic words here. Hopefully everybody's following. If not, feel free to ask, okay? But when you're doing these extra prayers, after a longer prayer session, have a repeated routine of a specific time when you do your deepest dua. It's usually best in the middle of the night. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم إن الناشئة الليل هي أشد وطئا وأقوم قيلا. Right? Indeed, in the depths of the night, your mind is sharper and your words are clearer. Oh, your words are stronger, right? So the best time for these prayers is actually the middle of the night. By the way, I used this method a few years ago to find my wife, right? I did it in Ramadan, which I think was in like August, right? October, I meet her at a conference, completely random conference. By the way, my wife was born and raised and lived all of her life in the Netherlands. I lived all my life in England. We met at a conference in Portugal. Neither of us went back to Portugal or went to the conference again, right? He's like, and there is no other place where we can see where we could possibly have crossed paths. Okay. So, and by the way, after we got married, I was telling her, hey, I was doing dua that Ramadan. She's like, you know what? Me too. That Ramadan before we met, she was also doing dua that she would meet her optimal partner, right? So I've used it during Ramadan. Other people have used this to save their marriage. Others have used it to find work if they were unemployed. They've used it to expand their business. It definitely works for expansion of business and getting more clients and that kind of thing. People have used it to transform their body, lose weight, stay fit and healthy for life, achieve all kinds of results, right? Basically, here's one way to think about it. Pray for the change that you'd be willing to literally pay any amount of money for, even though money probably can't buy it most of the time, right? So pray for the change that you would literally pay any amount of money to have that change. Like when you're single and you really want to be married, it feels like that. When you're married and you really want children, it feels like that. When you're married and you have children and they're driving you up the wall and you want them to behave themselves, it feels like that, right? When you don't have a job and you really want one, it feels like that. It's like, what is the result that you would actually, you really want it? Take and make that the central focus of your prayers. Okay. In fact, let's do this right now. Let's do this right now. Take a minute now, trust your intuition, and write your biggest prayer. And if you want, you can just write it in the chat box. If it's not, now I know this is a personal and a private thing, but feel free, if you want, you can write it in a direct message to me, or the best thing is just to share it with everyone. Chances are it's not going to be anything, if you want to keep it secret, I understand. You can send it in a direct message to me. If you don't mind other people knowing, in fact, in a moment, we're going to do dua for everyone else's prayers. So it might be nice if you actually share them. So go ahead right now and type in the chat box, what is your number one prayer, your number one goal, the number one dream that you want Allah to make happen for you? Write it in the chat box and let's everybody do that right now. Great. It's inevitable, inshallah, Kalista. Inshallah. Great. Eating moderately and have a real business. Excellent. Find a spouse. Perfect. Optimal spouse. Yes. The best time to make that prayer. To find that one purpose in life through which I can serve Allah and Muslims the best. Allahu Akbar. Transform my heart, mind, body in optimal state to better worship Him. Great. Transform my heart, mind, and body to its optimal state to better worship Him. The opportunity to perform Hajj. Yeah. Also known as like $15,000, $20,000 or something. That would be nice. And then spend that on going on Hajj. Excellent. I say that because, as we know, the prices for Hajj have expanded lately. May Allah make me a reason for the Quran to come into people's life. Oh, love that one. Keep my kids, their iman all through their lives, to be completely debt-free. I love that one as well. Excellent. Excellent. Thank you for sharing. And keep them coming. Keep them coming. What I would say as well is, what's the difference between, I probably should have covered this before, but what's the difference between a goal and a state? A state is internal, it's a feeling, and it can actually come at the speed of light, at the speed of thought, right? A goal is time-based by definition. It's something that you can't, well, Allah can make it happen instantly, and Allah's sunnah is to make it happen in time. Okay, so have what I would say is, yeah, strong family unit. This is tangible, and it's something that you can see it and measure it, right? So happiness is a wonderful state for all of us to be in, and state of mind for all of us to learn how to achieve and to be in. But it comes at the speed of thought. It comes faster. So keep that distinction in mind when you ask Allah for things. You can ask for both, but yeah, keep it tangible as well. Ameen. Ameen to the people who are sending me their private du'as as well. Okay. Next up, it's the next part of the plan here. So reflect on the biggest change. Yeah, take a minute, type it in the chat box. Again, keep them coming. Feel free to keep them coming. If you're unsure, and just to kind of double check here, because you might, I'm going to give you a list that may apply to you. So if you're unsure, if you're struggling, not everybody typed in the chat box, so maybe you're thinking through what your top dua, the biggest change you want to make is. Here are some ideas. Some of people have already written this, and I love that people are using the terminology optimal partner, because I've done a lot of marriage coaching over the years, and one of the biggest mistakes is to do dua that you get married. Don't just do dua that you get married, because I have a good number of clients who I've helped them get married, and I also have other clients who I'm helping them not get divorced, right? And if there's any one advice they would have is like, hey, choose deliberately and consciously. So don't just pray to get married, pray to marry your optimal partner. And your optimal partner, by the way, is the one person on earth that only Allah knows who it could, only Allah could possibly know who it is. No algorithm will figure this out, okay? The one person on earth for whom you're the best match and who's the best match for you. You're their optimal partner and they're your optimal partner. That's your optimal partner. Okay, another one that may apply, if you want to save or improve your marriage, that should definitely come number one, because this is the person you spend the most time with. This is the person you don't want to be sinning around because you're wasting time arguing with each other, right? And a solution is not to just not be with each other because you're married, right? Another one, to transform your body. If you're overweight, if you've slowly but surely been putting on weight over the years and now it's getting a little bit out of control, great to ask Allah to change it in you, right? You want to let Allah do the heavy lifting of your biggest goals, right? Ask Allah to give you your partner. Ask Allah to save your marriage. Ask Allah to transform your body, right? You will have a role in this as well. We'll come to that later, but for now, let Allah do the heavy lifting. That's the purpose of prayer, is to know that even when you take action, it's still Allah created you and your actions, as we know. So upgrade your career is another one. Grow your business is another one. Get abundant wealth and never be in financial need or debt. A beautiful dua. To be closer to your kids or improve their behavior. To change or improve a certain family dynamic. Maybe something funky is going on in your family. Well, if that changes in Ramadan, it will completely change your life, right? And of course, there's always a spiritual and Quran upgrade. And it could be anything else. But I want you to be specific. The more vague, this is your number one prayer you're going to make. Make it specific, not vague. Make it specific enough that you know when Allah has delivered it to you, right? That's the key. Now, here's the thing. You ever heard the saying of the Prophet ﷺ? Tie your camel and trust in Allah. And it comes because a Bedouin literally asked the question like this. A Bedouin said to the Prophet ﷺ, do you, he was asking about tawakkul ala Allah, trusting in Allah, relying on Allah. He said, do I rely on Allah and just let my camel go, or do I tie my camel and rely on Allah? And the Prophet ﷺ said, tie your camel, tie it and rely on Allah. So tie the camel with tawakkul ala Allah. So with whatever your biggest goal is, and I see many, many more have come through. Excellent. People are praying for their kids to have spouses. Great. Beautiful. Memorize Quran, inshallah. Brilliant. I'm loving it. Yes. Make my spouse the coolness of my eyes, not the stress of my mind. Ameen. Ameen. So here's the next step. We want to do the dua, but we also want to tie our camel. Tie your camel and trust in Allah. And I was thinking about how I can facilitate people to do this. Well, Ramadan's the best time for a consciousness upgrade, to get really real about what you want in life. It's also the best time to start making the change. So I'm going to open up to people. I won't be able to do it with everyone here. So if you get one of these, great. And if you don't, do dua. Make it your next Ramadan dua that you get one, right? Because every time I've offered a Ramadan transformation session or a conscious Ramadan session, they've gone really quickly, okay? Literally within a few hours, I'll get 40, 50 applications. So the outcome of this session, it's always a powerful one. Whenever we do them during Ramadan, somehow there's more barakah in these sessions and they become more like on point and more. It could be because shaitan's not around and because it's like you come face to face with your nafs. But the outcome of this session is to take that big dua, take that big goal, the number one thing you're praying for, and create a strategy and a plan. I'll analyze it with you. I'll figure out what's going on and basically make your success inevitable, inshallah. Making your success inevitable means tying your account, means doing the things that you can do to make it like it's all but inevitable that it happens. And then you continue doing the dua that Allah makes it happen. When I did dua that I would meet my wife, it's not like that's the only thing I did. That was the main thing I did. But the other thing I did is I would be very responsive and open when people said, hey, there's somebody I think you should meet. And, oh, this person is, go speak to this person, go meet with that person. I was completely on board. I was meeting everyone. And I was being very social and going to conferences and everything. But the point is, I was doing my part of the plan to time my camera. And I got coaching on it, by the way, right? I actually had two coaches. I had two coaches, I remember, to get my head clear, to get my focus clear and everything. So anyway, the idea is to turn it into an inevitable plan. What we do during the session is we create a crystal clear vision of your biggest goal, the dua that you just wrote down, but we'll develop it and go deeper into it. What does it really look like? And we'll look at what your new upgraded lifestyle will be like when that's actually completely handled. Like, imagine what life would be like if you'd never argued with your husband or your wife. That's actually possible. It's actually possible. The arguments, people think it's not, but no, it is possible. It's possible that when there's a conflict, it doesn't have to be a proper argument, because the really serious conflicts shouldn't be an argument. The really serious conflicts, where you're actually not seeing eye to eye on something, that's when you really need to be closer than ever so you can figure a way through, right? I'll give you an example. In my own marriage, my wife, when we got married, her preferred place to live was the Netherlands. My preferred place to live was the UK. What did we do? Did we just fight and argue about it? No, we figured it out. We created a vision together of, we're going to spend some years here, some years there, some years in another place. I'm not going to, and we're working towards our ultimate vision of what we want to do together, which I'm not going to reveal on this call. But we figured it out. Okay, so anyway, create critical clear vision, biggest goal, and a new upgraded lifestyle. Uncover the hidden ego traps, the challenges that may have been sabotaging you, just the nufs traps that we fall for that get in the way of us. Let me put it this way. If you had no insecurities, doubts, limiting beliefs, negative emotions, if you had none of that stuff, nothing would be stopping you just making the goal happen. And the problem is, it's very hard to see that stuff when you're analyzing it yourself. When you're in your own head, you can't see the forest from the trees. You can't outthink your own thought. You go crazy, right? The next thing we do is we create a 5-part inspired action plan that makes your success inevitable, inshallah. We always say inshallah, right? And you'll leave the session renewed, re-energized, completely inspired, ready to start taking action immediately after the session to make that upgrade happen. If you want to book the session, there's the magic link, okay? Go to mamoonyusaf.com/apply. Again, I can't do it with everyone who's here, all right? I'm going to do one session a day during the weekdays of Ramadan, but not during the last week of Ramadan. So was I going to add up to like 10, 15 sessions, something like that? So if you want to book in a session, go to mamoonyusaf.com/apply. You'll see some options of what your main goal might be, if that's the same one as the one that you just typed in the chat box. But if not, there's space for you to enter in what your number one goal is. And then answer you don't have to do the application right now, but when you do the application, answer it as completely as you can, because I do read it and look through it for everybody that applies. And obviously before the session and everything, I really carefully look through the responses that you gave. So if you give minimal responses and somebody else gives a really in-depth response that's like touches my heart, they may, and I have to choose between two people to have the session, like when you make the application, apply properly, okay? There is no cost to the session. It's a free session. I always do this during Ramadan, and go for it, okay? Okay, so that's the Ramadan session. I am going to type into the... Hold on a second here. So yeah, I am a professional coach. I've been doing it for a very long time, over a decade. Whatever your goal is, I'll have a look at it. And by the way, if you are already receiving coaching from me on a weekly basis, you don't need to apply to the session, okay? Just shoot me a message. Tell me what's going on. I'll coach you anyway. If you're one of my clients, you're already you're already working with me. That's great. If you have never worked with me before, we've never had a one-on-one conversation, and you want to know what happens during one of these life-changing coaching sessions, apply. So I'm just going to type this in the chat box, mamoonyusuf.com/apply. And what will happen is within 24 hours, check your email, like basically check your email all day tomorrow, because within 24 hours, you're going to get a response from me and my team giving you the link to my calendar. If you're slow to respond, you'll miss out on the session, okay? And if you're fast, you'll get your session during Ramadan. All right, that's enough of that. Let's talk about 3 ways you can leverage Ramadan to actually go to a higher level of consciousness and get a higher level and quality of fast, all right? The first way is the fast, easy fat loss plan. The fast and easy fat loss plan. What is that? Okay, I'm gonna need my slides for this. Okay, the fast and easy fat loss plan. This is something that my whole life I wish someone told me about this sooner. I wish someone told me about this sooner. The amount of effort and energy we put into physical training, doing sports, dieting, multi-billion-dollar industries, the dieting industry, and lo and behold, little did we know, we hadn't had the science behind it until recently. Little did we know, the best way to lose fat and lose weight is the cheapest way, which is to stop eating. Now, when I was at school, they were like, oh, God, is this good for your health? You're not eating all day. Oh, it was like such a big deal. And they were like, oh, it was like people would get so concerned about the health and, oh, how are you going to concentrate? Well, it turns out it improves your concentration because you don't have the lull after a big, heavy carb-filled lunch, right? But the Ramadan fast is the fastest, easiest way to lose all unwanted body weight. And the reason it's so easy is the hard part you're doing anyway. The hard part you're doing anyway. This is what you really got to get your head around. When you're doing the Sunnah fast, the Fard fast, you're doing the hardest part of fat loss anyway. 95% of it you're already doing, which is going for a massive chunk of the day without eating and drinking anything. You get to 6, 7 o'clock at night, and your number of calories is like 0 or like maybe 100 or 200 calories you had the whole day because you've been fasting, maybe had a bit of suhoor. So what we do here is it's just the other 5% is simply consciously choosing what you eat for iftar. And a little side note here, there's this thing you might want to look at called the Sunnah. If we ate according to the Sunnah anyway, we would all be thin and strong, right? And there's another book called The Manners of Eating by Al-Ghazali. It's part of Ihya Ulumuddin. And it's incredible. The way the Prophet ﷺ would sit, he would eat on the floor. He would just lay out a tablecloth on the floor made of leather that he would carry with him. He would put the food on there. He would eat, say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, take a bite, finish it, swallow it, say Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, and say Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim and take the next bite. If you just did that, you'd be thin. There is actually a book by Paul McKenna, the hypnotist, and the book is called I Can Make You Thin. And one of the biggest strategies in that book is slow down when you're eating. Because what happens is 20 minutes after you start eating, your body, the connection between your stomach and your brain kicks in, and you realize that you're full 20 minutes later, which gives you a 20-minute window to either go crazy and eat like after not eating for 12 or 16 hours, whatever it is, depending on where in the world you are, you're going to eat whatever you are going to eat, whatever's in front of you. You just are. You're a human. It's your what we want to do is slow down as much as possible, do dua as much as possible, and then be very conscious about choosing what we're going to eat for iftar. The moment the fast opens, you're going to eat what's in front of you with joy. Remember that hadith? The fasting person has two joys, the joy upon opening their fast and the joy upon meeting their Lord. Well, that is actually an indication you're going to enjoy that moment anyway, right? Haven't you had times where you didn't have time to pray, you're out and about and you just, whatever was around, you had an M&M or something, and that was your iftar, right? It happens sometimes, but it's still a joyful experience because you're going to eat whatever's available. So the simple thing to do as you're preparing for Ramadan is, how can I make it so that what is in front of me at iftar time is going to be the best thing for me? And the simplest way to do that, there is actually a book. Some of you will know this. If you've been in my world for any amount of time, you'll know this. There's a book called The 5-2 Diet, which is about doing Sunnah fasting. And the same author now has a book called The Fast 800, which is about the Ramadan fast. Okay. Now, he doesn't say it's the Ramadan fast, but it is. It's the Ramadan fast. Basically, what you do is you fast every day, and then during the nighttime, you keep yourself to about 800 calories per day, which is not a lot, but it's about the Sunnah. It's roughly about the Sunnah. If you think about it, the Prophet ﷺ, as a maximum, the maximum is to eat a third full of food and a third full of water and a third full of air. That's the maximum. But the Prophet ﷺ's method was to eat enough to keep the back upright. So 800 calories a day, is that very, very, very low? Yeah, it is. But it's completely easy and manageable. And it's, the 5-2 diet, he used to say have 500 calories on the fasting day, which is basically a meal of greens and protein. But for the Ramadan fast, the doctor behind this, and they've done a lot of studies, there's like the Diamond study and the Direct study, all these studies that have done primarily for people with diabetes or who are pre-diabetic. By the way, a third of the population is pre-diabetic, it turns out. So people with diabetes, they would go on this 800 calorie fast and it would completely reverse all of the symptoms of their condition, right? Especially those who are heavier. So anyway, 800 calories a day, try it out. You'll see it's like a bowl of lentils. It's going to be 300 calories, 400 calories, right? A protein shake for suhoor is my trick. So yeah, you don't have to count your calories, by the way, but if you stick to only protein and greens, so that's like grilled chicken or grilled fish and greens, or a bowl of lentils or something like that, with absolutely no fatty fried foods, no dessert, no chocolate, none of that rubbish, at least during Ramadan, you will get absolutely ripped. Right? You will get thin and strong, believe me. I've done this myself many times. I did it with my wife a couple of years ago. If you just make it lean protein and greens or a salad and eat until you're completely full, which isn't even the Sunnah, but when you're doing this, you can eat until you're completely full on protein and greens and you still won't hit 600 calories, right? So if you were doing the Sunnah, you'd be eating even less than that. And then I would say have an optional small meal at suhoor time. Listen, the Sheikh Ahmed Babakar had this conversation with me when he was talking about the value of time at a retreat I was at with him. And he said, listen, the Prophet ﷺ said there is blessing in the sahar, in the suhoor, right? In there's blessing in the sahar. And he was saying, the whole course he was teaching was about the value of time. And he was saying, listen, the sahar is an hour in the day before Fajr starts. So that's usually when we wake up, we have our meal. And Babakar said, you should be really clear about this. The blessing isn't in the food itself. It's in the time of day. There's a time of day when all of your prayers are answered. There's a time of day when it's the fact that you're eating that it's not the food, it's the fact that you're eating the food in order to fast. It's the fact that Allah has blessed the time that you're in, that you're doing the eating. That's what's special about the time. So if you're going to have suhoor, find out what works for you, but I like to aim for about 800 calories, fill myself up in the evening with one iftar meal, which will end up being 500-600 calories. And then for suhoor, I normally just have a protein shake. I'm not, whey protein is a byproduct of cheese production, so if you're going to say, oh, that's so unnatural, well, yeah, it's as unnatural as cheese, right? But I'm a guy and I do weight training and stuff like that. So you do whatever works for you. You could have scrambled eggs with greens, whatever. But keep your suhoor meal smallish, filling but small. That's the key you're going for. If you hit 800 calories, you're going to notice a few wonderful things happen. One of the best things that happens is after 2 or 3 days, you're going to notice you feel really good and you don't get very hungry at all during the day, because something kind of magical happens to your body. You flip a metabolic switch and your body, especially if you eat what I just said, greens and protein, predominantly greens and protein and healthy fats, and you make up 800 calories. What happens is you're taking in such little food and you're taking in such little sugar and complex carbohydrates or simple carbohydrates that you flip a metabolic switch, and within 2 or 3 days, your body moves into what we call ketosis. Now, I'm not talking about doing a keto diet. I'm talking about doing normal Ramadan fasting, but just eating a small to moderate amount, right? Which is going to end up being 800 calories, and having it be mainly greens and protein. What's going to happen is you're going to get into a state of ketosis within a couple of days, which means if you keep eating that way for the whole of the rest of Ramadan, your body is in fat burning mode. Why is it good for your body to be in fat burning mode? Not just because you burn fat, but because what that means literally is your body isn't using the food you eat as its primary source of fuel. It's not using the sugar that it normally gets from the food you eat as a primary source of food. What it's using is the stores of fat energy, which contains way more calories than the little meal that you're eating, because 1 pound of fat has like 3,000 calories or something in it, right? So your body is now using that 24/7 to fuel itself. And it's like the food that you're eating is minimal, because your body needs a couple of thousand calories a day. You're only taking in 800, and it's not in the form that is easily stored as fat, because it's in the form of proteins and greens. So what ends up happening is metabolic switch gets flipped. Before long, you're burning fat 24/7, and then this beautiful thing happens. You're fasting just like everybody else, but your fasts are easier because your body has now flipped this switch, right? This isn't the psychological switch. This is the physical switch, okay? This is the physical switch. And this is why you've probably heard of the keto diet and all this kind of stuff, and it's all a big rage. And this is the reason why it's such a big deal, is because now your body's using fat 24/7 all the way through Ramadan for 30 days. You see why this might result in you, and on top of that, you're taking in relatively low calories, right? I mean, 800, even 1,000 calories a day, if you went up to 1,000, but eating these kinds of foods, you're still in a massive calorie deficit every day. And when you're in a big calorie deficit, the primary thing the body does is that's the reason your body stores fat, is so that when it doesn't have food, it can use that fat to fuel your everyday existence. Boom. This is the way that you can use Ramadan, leverage Ramadan to transform your body. People often ask me when I say, oh, but does that mess with your intention? No, it doesn't mess with your intention. You know why? Firstly, you're still observing the Muslim fast in exactly the same way. You're still not getting intimate with your partner. Why? Because it's Ramadan. You're still not drinking water. If you weren't doing a proper Muslim fast, you'd be drinking water all day, wouldn't you? No, you're not doing any of that. So, of course, your intention is completely clean. It's still a proper Sunnah and Fard fast. What you're doing, actually, you're not changing the fast in any way. What you're changing is what you eat when you're not fasting. That's the only thing we're talking about changing here. Okay, so as you can tell, I'm really excited about this. I'm a little bit squidgy around the edges right now. I'll be honest. I'm a little bit more squidgy than usual around the edges. And I know that inshallah, I won't be by the end of Ramadan. Okay, lean protein, optimal suhoor. Okay, how much weight will you lose? How much fat will you lose? It depends on you and your body. It depends how fat you are right now, if I'm totally honest with you. How fat you are right now, how old you are, how long it's been since you've done something like this. But they did a study called the Diamond Study with people who had diabetes, presumably people who eat a lot of sugar and, you know, are quite overweight. And they, on average, over 8 weeks doing this, and this is just having 800 calories a day, not necessarily doing the Muslim fast, right? But they would have almost 10 kilograms of fat loss over 2 months. So on average, you're looking at 1 to 1.5 kilograms per week, which is about 2 to 3 pounds per week of weight loss. But of course, it depends on how fat you are. If you're really overweight, you're going to lose a lot of fat really fast when you're on 800 calories a day. And if you're, I'm not really overweight, right? So when I do it, it's going to be a lot slower, but I still expect a couple of inches will drop off my waist, right? Which is pretty good going, even though it's no harder than what everyone else is doing. Everyone else is getting fatter. They're eating their gulab jamun and their pakoras and stuff like that, and they're getting fat, even though they do put the same amount of hard work in as I am. And here's the thing as well, because you're being a little bit more conscious about what you're going to eat and what you're going to prepare. For my wife and I, it's like it's actually easier to do this because there's less extra. You're not going to do a big extravagant buffet, right? It's like a bowl of lentils. It's like a chicken and greens. It's the easiest thing in the world to prepare, and it makes it easier to the preparation time goes down. Okay, now before I tell you the second method that will absolutely transform Ramadan for you, absolutely transform your life in Ramadan. Before I go into this one, I want to ask you something. I want to ask you to type into the chat box. Is it okay to eat 2 chapati or bread? Just count the calories. Like this is why the 800 calories yard mark, like rough round yard mark, is really useful because a chapati is going to be about 120 calories. So if you're eating 2, that's 240. So you got to then be careful what else you're eating, right? And if you're having the chapati with a big salan that's very oily, then you really have to be careful how many calories that's going to be. Not 800 per meal, it's 800 over the whole day. So it's 800 from all night. So it's about 400 or 500. So what normally I end up typically doing is maybe about 600 for the iftar meal, and then a couple of hundred at for me a protein shake at suhoor time, which is just a couple of hundred calories. The Fast Diet with the Fast 800 books by Dr. Michael Mosley. Yeah, what we're really talking about here is the Fast 800 book. All right, that's got, if you want the scientific studies and the details and things like that, check out the Fast 800 book. Thank you, Nergis, our resident health coach, weight loss coach. Great. Okay. So what I want you to do right now, as we move on to the next big transformation, I think we can agree, the one prayer, that's a huge transformation. The transforming your body, losing all the excess body fat. Like literally, you could have a 6-pack at the end of Ramadan if you do this properly, right? If you're, depending on how big you are now, obviously, right? And on what else you've been doing. What about other veggies, non-green veggies, potatoes, cauliflower? Don't touch potatoes. They're a trap. Don't touch potatoes. Every other vegetable pretty much is okay. Cauliflower is amazing, but greens, carrots, colorful vegetables, let's say. But if you're in doubt, just have a quick look at how many calories are in a cup. Right? How many calories in a cup of potatoes versus a cup of cauliflower? A cup of rice, a couple hundred calories. A cup of spinach, 7 calories, right? So that, yeah, you're asking me about specific foods. I think you can count and you can use Google so you can figure it out. I'm saying stick to 800 calories a day. The problem with these starchy carbohydrates that we're calling vegetables that are designed to make you fat, including sweet potatoes and potatoes, they're the 2 biggest culprits, right? The problem with them is you can have them and you can stay under 800 calories. You will probably fall out of ketosis, which isn't the end of the world. It'll take you another day or 2 to get back into it. You can have cauliflower rice as rice. That's true. And you can look into other flours for chapatis. There's a thing called fiber flour. But we're getting into real specific. I don't want to have the whole session about this. I want to ask everybody another huge question, because now we're going to talk about the second big transformation, which is how much free time do you have? If you're a really busy person, let me put this in other terms. How busy are you? If you're a super busy person, write 10 in the chat box. If you're busy enough that you don't really have an extra 2 or 3 hours in your day, if you're a really busy person, write 10. And if you have a lot of free time, write 1 in the chat box. How busy are you on a scale of 1 to 10? If I have an ocean of free time, the answer is 1. If I have absolutely no free time, the answer is 10. Yep. Okay. 10, 9, 8, 10. I saw a 1. God bless you. You're going to have a great Ramadan, inshallah. 10, 9.5, 8, 9, 10. Great. Wonderful. As I expected, most people here, some people have a 1, and I love how it's 1. It's either 1 or 10, basically. It's either 1 or 2 or 3, or it's like 8, 9, and 10. No one's got like 7. I have some time. No, it's either 1 or 10. I have free time, but my energy is low in the free time I have. Yeah. So now I'm going to tell you about the next big transformation. Now I'm going to tell you about the next big transformation. How busy are you? If you have a few hours of free time, if you have an ocean of free time, put 1. No free time, put 10. Now I want you to do something. Go to your smartphone and look at your screen time and write down the number of minutes in the chat box. Oh, that's right. It won't be minutes, will it? Write down the number of hours of time that you stare at your phone in the chat box. And do this with zero judgment, by the way. I have no judgment about this, but just take a minute right now. Now, I know this might be difficult because you might be on Zoom while you're on your phone. So you're going to have to like figure out how to, if you can't look at it right now, that's okay. But if you can look at it, please look it up. Okay, 3 hours, 39 minutes. All right, so nearly 4 hours. Great. 48 minutes. Fantastic. Wajiha. 4 hours. Great. I want some more answers here. How many hours? Anisha, you see, it's the switched on people who are on it. Anisha's 1.25 hours. Anisha as a switch coach. How can you find screen time? You go into like general, you go into settings, general, and there's a thing there that's, let me, 2.5 hours. Good. Masuda's like 4 hours. 7 hours. All right. And I wonder if there is a certain kind of person that comes to my webinars because I did this. Oh, 37 minutes on my iPad. Okay. 6 hours. iPad is not the same as iPhone, right? So 1 hour. Okay, good. Honestly, these aren't too bad, right? We're getting 4. It goes up to 6. It goes up to 7. I had a gathering at my house the other day, and I asked everybody this, and it was like literally 10 hours, and it wasn't that. There wasn't one. There was like 2 people with 10 hours. Had a day of 10 hours in the last week. Okay, here's what I want to share with you. Remember, this doesn't even count TV watching. This is 4 hours you're just looking at your phone, right? Then there's TV watching. The average American spends 4 hours a day watching television. Imagine what would happen to your mind, your spirituality, your life, if you completely remove all non-essential digital technology for 30 days. How do you define non-essential? Anything you don't absolutely need. Now, technically, you don't really need anything digital, right? You don't really need any form of digital entertainment. But I would make an exception for something that you absolutely need for work. For example, this laptop I'm using right now to hold this session. Technically, it's digital technology, but I'm not going to stop doing Zoom sessions with clients. I'm not going to not do the Ramadan transformation sessions because I don't want to use digital technology. But what I will do is remove all apps from my phone, including all social media, which I've already done that anyway. But I'll tell you what else is not essential that often slips through the cracks, and it trips a lot of people up, myself included. right? I tried doing this before without removing a certain app, and I didn't realize how. See, here's the problem with removing apps from your phone is if you remove apps, like almost all apps these days are literally designed as much as possible to hook your attention, right? That's what they're designed to do, to distract you and hook your attention and keep as much of your attention as possible. We live in an attention economy. The value, the highest value thing that you can offer people is your attention. That's the greatest gift you've got. And you're giving it away for free. Right? Nobody's paying you to be on Facebook or Instagram or whatever, or TikTok. Nobody's paying you to be there, but you're on there, or some of you, and it's your most valuable thing. And they, like, these companies are making multiple billions, hundreds of billions of dollars through capitalizing on your attention. But here's the sick thing. The awesome thing, in a way, is, let's remember, what's the highest level of fasting in Ramadan? Is to not give your attention to anything but Allah. Every time your phone distracts you, it's distracting you from Allah. Every time you get pinged, it's something that, in fact, studies have shown that just having your phone around within a few feet of you or visible reduces the quality of connection you're having with another person, if you're at a dinner table, for example, and it lowers your IQ. If you're doing work and your phone is visible, it literally lowers your IQ and they've like measured out the number of IQ points you drop just by your phone being visible, even if it's off, even if you're not being pinged. Okay, it's crazy. So if we want to maximize Ramadan, the most powerful way to do it, and I'm saying this with some amount of trepidation, because I'm not, I don't believe in preaching, preaching without doing. I don't believe in that. Yeah, it's a big trap. Right, so I'm saying this with the trepidation because in a previous year, eliminated all social media apps from my phone, but I left on YouTube. Why? Guess why I left YouTube on? Somebody guess. Right in the chat box. Why do you think I left YouTube on my phone? Same reason you would probably think to leave YouTube on your phone during Ramadan. Why would you leave YouTube on? That's right. Islamic lectures, Quran, motivational videos. Yep. That's right. That's exactly why. Now, I want you to really hear me on this, right? I have quite a lot of discipline and willpower, alhamdulillah, especially in Ramadan. We have a lot more because we're fasting, right? And I eliminated all social media and all these other apps that could distract my attention. But I left YouTube because, Umar Suleiman, right? Allah yahfidhu, right? Umar Suleiman and Noman Ali Khan and all of this, right? And I left that one on. But here's the thing. If you eliminate all apps, but whichever ones you leave on, you're going to use them a whole lot more than you did before. Like if right now there's Instagram and there's TikTok and there's Facebook and there's Twitter and everything, and you eliminate all of them, but you leave one, like YouTube or even podcasts, right? The one that you leave is like you're going to, as a compulsive reaction, hundreds of times a day, you're going to your phone and just doing this, right? So the one that's on is the one you're going to use way, way more. And what happens is, the question you got to ask is, if your rationale behind having the app is, oh, but there might be some benefit in it, I got to tell you, that's a stupid rationale. Of course there's some benefit in it. If there was no benefit in it, no one in the world would be using it. There's some benefit in it. That's a very weak question to ask if you want to increase your consciousness as high as it can go during the month of Ramadan. If the purpose of your life is to connect with Allah and increase your consciousness and know Allah, then that's a very weak question. Might there be some benefit in it? Yeah, of course there might be some benefit in it. The question you should be asking is there no possible way for me to gain the same benefits without using an app designed by a multi-billion-dollar corporation whose sole intention is to hook my attention and distract me from Allah. You might say, oh, they're not trying to distract you from Allah. Don't say they're evil. They're not trying to distract you from Allah. Firstly, they might be evil. You don't know. But secondly, they're trying to distract you. They don't care if you're going to worship or you're going to play football, but they are trying to distract you. They're trying to hook your attention. By definition, the algorithm, right, which is designed by people, and I don't know, like if my mission in life was to misguide people, like if I was but if I was shaitan, I would probably be well involved in the people who are creating the little bits of software that billions of people are using. Anyway, that's a side point. That's my own little theory. But what is objectively true is the app is designed to hook your attention. Can you get the benefit without using the app? So now you think, all right, well, Noman Ali Khan. What if I want to listen to like a lecture by Sheikh Faraz Khan or Imam Zaid Shakir? Well, guess what? If you take a minute to think about it, each of these scholars are usually part of an institute, and they all have, a lot of them, the really big ones, have their own app, and they definitely have their own website, right? You could, if you want Islamic lectures, get the Dean Stream app. Oh, but then I'll have to pay $9. Yeah, pay $9. You don't want to pay $9, but you're letting a multi-billion-dollar company hook your attention for the entire month to save you $9. Somebody said to me the other day, oh no, I'm on YouTube, but it's okay because I pay for premium, so I'm not seeing the ads. I'm like, dude, it's not about the ads. That just means you're hooked on it so badly. So yeah, you've got Bayana, you've got Noman Ali Khan's stuff is all on Bayana, which you should be paying for anyway. It's illegally bootlegged, some of it onto YouTube, so don't look at that stuff anyway. Get it directly from the source. You've got the Bayana app, you've got Dean Stream for Imam Zaid Shakir and Sheikh Hamza. You've got Seeker's Guidance, the website. It's literally any level of Islamic study you want to do, and they all have special courses during Ramadan. My point is, you don't need YouTube. And what happens when if you're depending on YouTube or Instagram, and yeah, if you're on there, you're right. Everybody does put their most beneficial stuff up during Ramadan. It's true. Even I have a Ramadan transformation series from years ago that's still pretty beneficial, and every Ramadan people go through it, and a lot of people told me it changed their lives. Alhamdulillah, wonderful. But the question is, can you get it without having to go on that platform? If you go onto the platform hoping that you'll come across some benefit, of course you'll come across benefit, because the algorithm knows, oh, it's Ramadan and this person's a Muslim and they're going to like Noman Ali Khan. But that's not where the game is played. Where the game is played is the next video on the playlist, the suggested videos that appear underneath the video that you're watching, the next bit that, right? And you know this, it's like you start watching Noman Ali Khan and then you're like, oh, Piers Morgan said what about Palestine? Right? And then you're like, oh, well, there's going to be benefit. I have to watch it. I have to be on social media because otherwise I can't save Palestine if I'm not on social media. Like, dude, you're not saving Palestine anyway. You're ruining your soul, and you know it. If you want to save Palestine, start by increasing your taqwa. Allah will not change the state of a people until they change what is in their nafs. Ma bi anfusihim, literally. Until they change what is in their egos. And you're not going to change what's in your nafs without increasing your taqwa. You're not going to increase your taqwa by being hooked on social media. I'm going to get off my high horse now and stop preaching. What I will say is non-essential digital technology means non-essential digital technology. Do I need email on my phone? I had email on my phone, but I realized actually I don't really need it because I should be doing email while I'm sitting at my desk, and I shouldn't be doing it while I'm at the dinner table with the kids. So even email, some people, they might have to have email on their phone for work purposes, but I honestly don't, right? If it's not absolutely essential, then don't use it. You can turn off your watch history so it doesn't recommend YouTube Shorts or anyone else besides subscribers. Yeah, if you turn your watch history on, you'll still, that's not where the game is played in YouTube. It's the suggested videos. If you turn off your history, it won't know what to suggest you, but it'll start guessing. It'll suggest more things, right? So there's no way out. Like, and it's a fool's errand to try and outsmart a multi-billion-dollar corporation with some of literally the most intelligent people on the planet are designing the software and the algorithm to hook your attention. You can try fighting it, but you're gonna fail. And don't believe me, because I didn't think this 2 or 3 Ramadans ago when I tried doing it. And I did get a lot of benefit from the lectures from the good people, but I also ended up wasting a lot of time. All right. So listen to lectures. I really want to shut down social media. I talk to my mum back home. I work for a masjid. All the work is communicated through WhatsApp. WhatsApp is the only social media. Okay, so WhatsApp is social media. It didn't used to be. It used to literally just be a texting service, right? But it has become social media. It's now owned by Meta. Same people that own Facebook and Instagram. And it's become social media. As a minimum rule, firstly, mute all the groups unless you absolutely can't. And number two, I would never click a link on WhatsApp because that link is going to a social media site, right? Just never click the links. If you can manage to do that, you'll be more safe. Turn off your watch history. Yeah. Baina Institute app is awesome. I agree. It's Palestinian. I feel it's important to stay abreast with daily news in Gaza and surrounding cities. Yeah. Do what you want. Hey, nothing I'm saying is foreign. You do whatever you want. I'm just saying, are you any? This is it's gonna. Hopefully, I know you well enough that you know that I'm going to say this with all the love and with the intention of your highest good and everybody's highest good in the world when I ask this question. But are you any less of a Palestinian if you keep more of your attention on Allah during Ramadan and do more serious dua than you would be if you had 4 hours on watching the news, right? Is the news changing from you watching it? I ask myself this as well, because it's a serious question. Is the news changing from me watching it, or is it changing me? Am I becoming more hard-hearted? Now, I get you want the information, that's fine. If it's essential to, absolutely essential to you, then I would ask the question, what is the minimum input I require to get what I need, right? Is it really being on social media, or is it getting a news update once a day in a written format that I can trust, right? So yeah, and look, and somebody else asked a question, but what if I need it for work? Yeah, I said non-essential technology, and you're gonna have to make your own decisions. I can't figure this out for everyone. Do what's right for you, but the more that you can cut it out, the better. And also, here's the thing. By the way, I'm not telling you to stop forever. You know why a lot of us feel nervous, myself included, before stopping digital technology for 30 days? I should have stuck to the presentation because I cover it. You know why it feels a little bit, why we have a bit of trepidation around it? Because yes, you'll get the benefits. Mental reduction in mental noise, complete peace of mind you haven't experienced in years. And after about 3 or 4 days, you'll have the itikaf effect. The itikaf effect is if you go and live in a mosque for a few days, after the first 2 or 3 days, you notice a sudden quietening down of your mind and connection with Allah that's really hard to come by. But it happens after 3 or 4 days of being in a mosque without your phone. And I wonder how much it's being in the mosque and how much it's being without the phone, right? Because I'm telling you, I've seen people who did itikaf with their phone and they were as agitated on day 9 as they were on day 1, right? And achieving your Ramadan goals becomes almost too easy when you do this. The biggest difficulty, here's why people don't do this, and here's why there's you're like asking a lot of questions like, oh, what can I really do without this? And what about that? And what if I need it for work? And part of what's really going on here is we don't realize that we're addicted. We're addicted to social media. We're addicted to using these apps. We're addicted to YouTube, to Instagram, and I mean addicted in the truest sense of the word. You will literally have withdrawal symptoms after removing non-essential digital technology. That's the first biggest difficulty. You'll have 2 or 3 days of withdrawal symptoms. And I say, just as if you were to quit alcohol during Ramadan, you'd have a couple of days of withdrawal symptoms. Just as if you were on drugs and you quit them during Ramadan, you'd have some withdrawal symptoms the first couple of days, right? You will literally have that. And if you don't, you probably haven't cut out enough digital technology. I'm just going to be honest with you. You're probably still on it. The second big thing is no idea what to do. This is the biggest problem people have when they do this. I have no idea what to do with the ocean of free time and mental clarity that suddenly becomes available. And almost everybody who fails a digital detox for 30 days, it's because they underestimate how much free time it's going to create. Did that sink in? The biggest reason you're going to fail is withdrawal symptoms because you're actually addicted. And the second biggest reason you're going to fail is because you freak out because you don't know what to do with 4 hours a day with nothing to do. Which again is why Ramadan is a great time. Because my guess is you can think of a thing or two you can do with your free time in Ramadan, right? So next thing we're going to look at, in fact, is what to do with your newfound free time when you quit your phone. Let's talk about the optimal Quran plan, and then we're going to wrap up. Okay, Quran for Busy People. If you haven't been through that program, it gives 10 logical steps to go through to achieve each and every one of your Quran goals systematically. During Ramadan, you want maximum connection with the Quran based on your current skill level. The best way to benefit from the Quran during Ramadan is you recite 20 pages a day with perfect recitation, understand every word of it, and enjoy the deeper inner meanings and have insight and become spiritually transformed. That's the best way to do the Quran in Ramadan. Recite 20 pages, perfect recitation, understand what every word means, and enjoy the deeper inner meanings and be transformed. That's how the Sahaba did it. That's the best way to do it. Anyone have a problem with that? Well, if you think about it for a minute, you might have a problem with it, which is you might have several problems with it, which is if you haven't been following the Quran for Busy People program, you might not have the skills to be able to do that. Okay? Oops. You might not have the skills to be able to do it. So I'm going to give you a shortcut. Because now it's a little bit late to go through the 10-step Quran for Busy People program and upgrade your recitation fluency and your tajweed and learn Arabic and everything between now and like Sunday or Monday, because that's going to be a bit tough. I'm going to give you a shortcut. And the shortcut is actually one of the 10 steps of the Quran for Busy People program. But I realized one year suddenly that this is an amazing thing to do during Ramadan. And it's step number 8 of the original program. And the reason it's step number 8 is because it works best after you've learned 80% of Quranic Arabic, which is step number 7 of that program. But let me just tell you how this method works, who it works for, and how you do it. The optimal Quran plan. If you can't recite the Quran in Arabic and understand it directly, firstly, there are many things you could do. You could recite it in Arabic without understanding it. And if you recite fluently, then you can get through the whole Quran that way. Okay, that's cool. You got the barakah of reciting it, which is wonderful. Secondly, you could read the English translation. You won't get the barakah of reciting the English translation because it's not the Quran. It's a person's interpretation of the Quran. And I say interpretation deliberately. It's not just a translation, it's an interpretation. Because why is rahmah mercy and not love? And not benevolence? There's no reason. It's a person's interpretation. So, why is sabr patience and not resilience? No Quran translation translates sabr as resilience, but as far as I can see, it's the best translation. Okay, so the point here is you can read the English translation, but it's not the Quran. So that doesn't cut it either, although it is a very beneficial thing to do, and many people have done it, and their lives have transformed in Ramadan doing that. I want to give you the optimal method. Even if you're on another Quran plan, I want you to consider trying this out, okay? If you speak Urdu, you can do this. If you've ever taken an Arabic course, you can do this. And if you've been a Muslim for a long time, but you don't know much Arabic, you can still probably do this because it doesn't take as much Arabic as I thought it would. I thought it would be logical to get your Arabic where you understand 80% of the Quran and then do this method. But it turns out I've shared it with people and they've done it never having really studied Arabic, but they know a bit of Urdu and they got away with it. And the method is this. Each day, you get your favorite reciter, you press play, not from YouTube, get a Quran app, right? Quran app. You know what? The Islamic apps, Seeker's Guidance, Dean Stream, Bayna, they're not addictive. You have to actually put a bit of effort into study them with the scholars, right? But what you do is you get the Quran app, you listen to your favorite reciter 20 pages at a time, right? So one juz at a time. You're listening to the Arabic. Simultaneously read the English translation. Now, the only caveat here is you have to have just enough Arabic that as you're reading the English translation, as you're listening to the Arabic, you're reading the correct part of the translation. So you're going one ayah at a time. When the reciter recites, you know which part of the English translation you're reading. Okay? If you know Arabic, this is very easy to do, right? And in fact, you'll be enjoying listening to the Arabic more than the actual reading. But it's good as well because there'll be the odd word. Even if you know 80% of the Quran, there's a couple of words on each, every 10 lines, there's 2 lines you don't know, right? And so it's nice to have the translation there to pick out the few words that you don't know. That's it. So now, remember the Quran, qara'a, is to recite. The Quran is the recitation, not the book. The book is the mushaf, right? It's symbols that represent the Quran. The Quran is the sound that comes out as you're reading the mushaf. So it's perfectly good to listen to the Quran and read the translation, because then you're getting the benefit of the meaning along with overview, which is the whole point, is you're overviewing the Quran in Ramadan. During the rest of the year, you might do a deeper study and tafsir and things like that, but during Ramadan, you really want to just do the overview. So you're overviewing the Quran by going through one juz or 20 pages or a 30th of it each day. You're understanding it directly in English, but you're listening to the Arabic to get the barakah of that. That's the shortcut method, okay? I feel a dawning sense of freedom. Yep. Just delete everything unnecessary. Oh, Callista. God bless you. Look at that. Just deleted everything unnecessary from my phone. Smiley face. How can we involve young kids in Quran reading? I'll answer these questions later. Tartil is a great app. Thank you for the recommendation. What's the best translation to do this? Interesting question. What's the best translation? It depends what your level of Arabic is right now. If you don't know Arabic, then I would just go with one of the general best translations, which is either the Majestic Quran by Hassan. It's not here. It's in the place where I sit to read the Quran. Okay. Deleted YouTube because you're right. I was totally trying to outsmart it. Amazing. Musharraf, thank you. Yes, Musharraf. So the Majestic Quran by Musharraf, or my long-term favorite that I've been reading for years is a new Oxford translation, is the Quran, a new Oxford translation by Professor Abdul Halim, who was one of my professors at SOAS at university. That's a really good translation. But I will tell you, my personal favorite translation for doing this method is actually the Sublime Quran by Layla Bakhtiyar, because she does something interesting in the translation, which is she always uses the same English word for the same Arabic word all the way through, which is a translation methodology, number one. Number two, the Sublime Quran of Layla Bakhtiyar. You got me on one of my favorite topics, so you're just going to have to listen to the full answer now, right? The Sublime Quran by Layla Bakhtiyar, number one, is same word all the way through, which I like because when she uses a translation that I don't like, for example, she uses one translation I love, which is she translates kufr, which some people translate as disbelief. It's quite an inaccurate translation, disbelief. You can't say it's wrong, but it's not very accurate. But she translates it in her translation, which in a way that's linguistically very accurate, as ingratitude. Right? So she translates kufr as ingratitude. I love that because it makes it universal. Now I'm reading about kufr and it applies to me. Where am I being ungrateful? By reading kufr as ingratitude all the way through the Quran, it really made me much more grateful. It made me emphasize gratitude in my own life. So that's when she uses a translation you like, but sometimes she uses a translation that I don't particularly love. For example, she translates taqwa as God-fearing. A couple of inherent problems. Firstly, in the word taqwa, the word God is not contained, right? That's why you say, taqillah, be conscious of Allah, but she would translate it as be God-fearing of God, right? It's like the word God isn't contained within the word taqwa. But secondly, the word fear isn't really in the word taqwa either. It's conscious, it's mindful, it's aware. These are much better translations, okay? But because she uses the same word all the way through, when I see her use God-fearing, I'm like, oh, taqwa, and then I can have more insight. So yeah. Question about the Quran, but do you recommend weight training in Ramadan? I recommend, if you're doing a calorie cut, if you are basically losing fat during Ramadan, then I'd recommend weight training once a week only. Why once a week? Because you're not, the aim during of weight training in Ramadan is not to pack on loads of muscle. It's to maintain your muscle and not lose muscle. See, if you maintain your weight training during Ramadan, then at the end of Ramadan, you won't have lost muscle, which means all the weight you lost is fat, right? That's why I like weight training. Now, so I recommend it, but I would go for minimalist weight training, meaning your chin up or lateral pull down, your press up or chest press, your squat, one set to failure of each major muscle. So you're looking at maybe 6 to 8 exercises. The whole thing shouldn't take more than 20 minutes. Do it once a week. Do it on the day that you happen to have the most free time, which will be every day if you put your smartphone, right? You do it on the day you have the most free time. It's optimal to actually do it in the evening, but in the evening, you tend to not have much time because you're doing iftar, and then you're getting ready, and then you go into tarawih, and then there's social gatherings and da-da-da. So that people find that quite difficult. I have found, this is not medical advice or whatever. Personally, I found if the fast is not an 18-hour fast, this becomes really hard on 18, but a reasonable fast, like a 12 or 15-hour fast, if you weight train right before iftar, like weight train and then give yourself a few minutes to sit down and do your prep, do your dua and things like that. That's a pretty good sweet spot, because by the time your body realizes what the heck you just did to it, it's iftar time and you can eat. Okay, so great. Routine. Let's cover routine. Let's cover routine, and then we'll go into Q&A, and I will stick around for as long as you want for Q&A. So quick reminder, if you want to achieve your biggest goal in the coming year, and you want Ramadan to be like a reset, where if it's a marriage that's not working, you hit the reset button during Ramadan. If it's your physical transformation, let's make it happen during Ramadan. If you want that to happen, book in a one-to-one coaching session with me. The outcome is to turn your Ramadan du'as into a real plan and strategy that works, a 5-part plan specifically. We'll create a crystal clear vision of your biggest goal, biggest goal in your new upgraded lifestyle, uncover hidden ego challenges that may have been sabotaging you, attempts to make it happen, create a 5-part inspired action plan, make your success inevitable, and you'll leave the session renewed, re-energized, and totally inspired to start taking action immediately after the session to create a major upgrade in your life. If you want to do all of that, go to mamoonyusuf.com/apply. I would do that. The sooner you apply, the more likely you are to get a session. I only have limited sessions in Ramadan. I'm going to do them for the first 3 weeks of Ramadan. I'm definitely not doing anything in the last week of Ramadan. So go ahead and apply. Just go to mamoonyusuf.com/apply, select the goal that's most relevant to you, or write it into the field where you can write it in. And inshallah, you could have your session. Check, okay, after you apply, I should really explain this properly, because after you apply, check your email the next day. Check it several times the next day, in fact, because as soon as we send the email with the calendar link, it's going to go, like, as soon as people click that calendar link, the sessions are going to get booked, right? So if you, what am I trying to say here? I'm trying to say, if you click the calendar link and there's no space available, it literally means you're too late. So as soon as the faster you apply, the sooner you're going to get the calendar link. But as soon as you get the calendar link, book it in, right? Also, don't book a session with me if you can't attend the session. Don't ever do that. I will never have a session with you ever. You'll never be able to hire me or any of my friends yet. Never, ever book a session with me and then don't show up, right? It happens very rarely, but dude, you'll like, big no-no, big no-no. Okay. So let's do the last thing here. Create a schedule right now, a quick and dirty one on a piece of paper based on fast times. And the best way to do this is look at the earliest time of Maghrib. Sorry, the latest time of Maghrib and the earliest time of Fajr. Right, the latest time of Maghrib and the earliest time of Fajr. Now, this particular Ramadan, the last week, the times change in the UK at least. The times change. So I have one plan for all of Ramadan and then a separate plan for the last week. But the main thing to do is, before the times change at least, look at what the latest iftar time is and the earliest Fajr time is. And based on that, say, all right, what would be the best time for me to be up, pray, have a protein shake or whatever your suhoor is going to be, and get yourself ready. So for me, in the UK right now, for me, it's about 4 a.m. Schedule in meal times, sleep time. The most important thing to get scheduled is your sleep time. The hardest part of Ramadan actually isn't the food. For most people, it's the sleep, right? Quran time. It takes about an hour to do a juz. If you're listening to a good reciter, you'll get through a juz in an hour. A relatively slow reciter will take an hour. So Quran time, you might want to split it. I like to split it into a Fajr and Maghrib time. Work time, that's when you're doing the normal work that you do anyway. And then fit your other absolute essentials around that, but keep as much of your time free as possible, right? And then any free time you find yourself with in Ramadan, use it with the Quran. Now, the key here is to make your routine easy enough to repeat all the way through the month. You don't want to burn out by trying to do too much. Like, okay, I'm going to do Taraweeh and then I'm going to sleep 5 hours and then I'm going to do Tahajjud and then I'm going to have suhoor. If you create a plan like that, you know you're going to burn out. So I wouldn't do that. I would create an easier plan, because what you'll notice is after you stick with it, after about a couple of weeks, the momentum starts building. And then you're really feeling the barakah in the devotional acts that you choose to do. Okay. So I would go for it that way. I would go for it that way. The easiest plan you can. I'm going to read out my plan. I don't have this written on the screen. Where's my Ramadan? Oh, here it is, Ramadan 2024. Okay, my plan is, okay, this is a little bit crazy. This is going to sound crazy, but my plan is to sleep at around 8:30 at night. Pray Isha, do Taraweeh at home. I follow the Maliki madhab. They prefer doing Taraweeh at home. Pray at home, and then literally at 8 o'clock, and then try and be in bed at 8:30. That would be optimal. Why? Because then I can get a full 7.5 hours sleep and be up at 4 a.m. And then I'm going to have suhoor, coffee, everything. In fact, I don't know if it would be useful if I actually share this in the chat box. Maybe I will. Okay, so here's my Ramadan plan. 4 a.m., wake up. 5 a.m., Quran. That's going on for a couple of hours. 8 a.m. Oh, let me. 8 a.m. Boys to school. 10 a.m. Jiu-jitsu, which I'm doing online, so it's not as bad as it sounds. 11 a.m. work. So I'm doing this for me. I'm just doing it as an example, right? I want you to create your own plan as you're hearing me do this. 4 p.m. boys. 5 p.m. boys dinner. Life's so much easier when you don't have these. So much more convenient when you don't have 4-year-olds running around. Okay. And then it's like 6:30 is iftar. 7 p.m. boys in bed. And then 8 p.m. So if you're in the UK and if the timings work, you could use something similar. Obviously, these are the personal things that I do. You know, you might not have kids to drop off and pick up and whatever, but that's it. Create your Ramadan routine. One of the keys that's making this one work is I'm getting a good 7.5 hours sleep by sleeping really early and then staying up from suhoor. There were times in previous Ramadans where I would do the opposite, where I'd stay up all the way until after Fajr, literally until sunrise, and then I would sleep at like 4 in the morning or whatever. But this year, it's easier to do this way around. So you've got to figure out what the timings are for you to make your own plan. And there are, of course, years where I had to wake up. If I was in the US or if I was somewhere where I couldn't get 7 hours sleep before suhoor, if I could only get 5 hours or something, then I would probably, after Fajr, this is one of the big keys to being productive in Ramadan, after Fajr, work, right? After Fajr, do productive work. Because you have lots of energy, you've had a meal, you've had your coffee, you do productive work, and then in the middle of the morning, if you can control your own timings and stuff in the middle of the morning, you can get an extra nap, all right? So you can split your sleep into two, but instead of, see, here's always a really bad idea in Ramadan that everybody does, and it's always a bad idea, is to sleep for 5 hours, have a big meal, and then try and sleep 2 or 3 more hours, and then you wake up really groggy and mash up and everything. What's way better than that is to sleep for 5-6 hours. If you can, you can probably always sleep for 6 hours before suhoor, right? Sleep for 6 hours, stay up for 6 hours, or you know, from like 4 a.m. or whatever the time is to 9 or 10 a.m. and then take a nap in the mid morning. You know, Mamoon, I have a job, right? But do you work online? If not, figure it out. It's Ramadan, right? If you can control your work hours, then control them in such a way that you give yourself the most easy Ramadan possible sleep-wise. So that's about all I've got. So that's your routine. You've got the 3 big transformations: your physical transformation, digital transformation, and the Quran transformation. Connect with the Quran in a way where, and the intention all the way through is to increase your consciousness. The way you do that is, instead of just remembering Allah when you get hungry and thirsty, also keep Allah, like bring Allah to mind with everything you look at, with everything you speak, with everything you listen to, with the meal you have as you open your fast. According to Al-Ghazali, if you eat more at iftar time than you would normally have for dinner, there was no point in fasting. It's still far to fast, so you still have to fast, right? It's not a get out clause. But the idea is there was no point, because literally the way in which fasting transforms you is you eat less than you would normally. You're meant to be eating, if you have 3 meals a day, you ought to be having 2 meals a day now. So you should be at least having 2/3 of what you would normally eat. What we're saying is a bit more radical than that, but it's only radical because we're so radical the rest of the time anyway. We're eating like thousands and thousands of calories a day. I'm saying, all right, well, now it's time to check it out. Yeah, there will be a recording. Now I'm open to Q&A for about the next 9 minutes. So if you have a question, feel free to raise your hand or type it into the chat box. How can we involve young kids in Quran reading 12 years of age? Read the Quran a lot yourself, and always get yourself into the happiest mood you can while reading the Quran. Don't read the Quran and then shout at your kids, right? Be as happy as you can as you're reading the Quran, and the more they see you doing it, the more they will do it. And because you're talking about 12 years old, from 0 to 7, if they see you reading, that's plenty. From 12, like literally just teach them how to recite the Arabic and start reading the Quran stories to your children. Could you show the last slide again, please? Yes, I can. So yeah, schedule in meal time, sleep times, Quran time, work time, and then fit your essentials around them. Make it easy enough to repeat all the way through the month without changing your routine. Great. Any other questions? Feel free to unmute yourself. You are welcome. Please, can you show the Imam Ghazali book again? Yeah. This is the key thing to know is it's the book of fasting. It's the book of charity and fasting, books 5 and 6. This whole series is being translated. They've been translating this for like 20 years and they're still working on it, right? But they're coming out faster now and they're amazing. All of these books by Al-Ghazali. It's The Revival of Religious Sciences by Fons Vitae. Great. I would love to know from everyone, what was your biggest takeaway or the biggest learning or the biggest learning you got and the biggest change you're going to make because of today's session? Write that into the chat box if you don't have any questions. Amazing that people have already deleted apps off their phone. Yeah. Turn off your... I really want to shut down social media. I talked to my mum back home. I work for a masjid, all the works community through us. So we already answered that one. What about if you need to access social media for your work? If you absolutely need it. So Kay says the fat loss plan, amazing. It's a game changer, honestly. I've been doing most of it, but just not consciously. Great. Don't try to outdo the mega social media businesses. Absolutely. Don't try and outsmart them. You're going to lose every time. Every time. Right? You know why? Because it's notifications turned off. Great. That's the minimum. I have all your notifications off as a minimum for everything always. My notifications for everything are always off. Right? And yeah, but I would also go a step further if you can and just delete everything that you can off your phone for Ramadan if you want to. Plus, the idea that you'll feel less hungry in ketosis and it'll be easier than harder. Yeah, I know. It's crazy, isn't it? Yeah. Great. I really like writing down my plan and schedule for the month. Yeah, it kind of takes a load off your mind. You just know what you're going to do and you can schedule things around it. And now it's not like the reason I can schedule everybody in to do their Ramadan transformation sessions is because I know exactly what hours I'm going to be working. So that the sessions are already, they're waiting in my calendar. Make a Ramadan plan, be as conscious as I can. Right? Digital detox and scheduling the days. Perfect. Biggest takeaway was for sure dua. I don't do enough of it. Amazing. Also motivated to go through Quran for busy people. Great. Taqwa is a state, not just a goal. Once you have it, you have it. It doesn't go up and down. Yeah. Huge. It doesn't fluctuate the way Iman does. Right? They say, for example, taqwa of belief is being conscious of enough of God to know that God exists. The taqwa of the major sins is to be conscious enough of God to not do any of the major sins. The taqwa of minor sins is that you're conscious enough of God that you avoid minor sins as well. And then they even say that the sins of the saints are like the good deeds of normal people. So like a saint might not do an extra supererogatory nafil prayer. So a saint might not do that, but for us, just doing the others would be it would be a good action. Okay. Deleting apps, food plan, getting knowledge from sources other than YouTube. Remembrance of Allah throughout the day. Alhamdulillah. Great. Great. Awesome. Well, we're almost at 2 hours. I thought it would be about an hour and 15 minutes. So that shows you how accurate my timing is. Thank you all for being here, especially most of you have been here all the way from the beginning, all the way through the end, which is pretty awesome. Thank you so much. One more thing is very important to do. Dua during Ramadan for your brother Mamoon, this helpless soul who's out here preaching. Make dua that I never say anything, that preach anything that I don't do, anything good that I don't do, and that Allah increases me in taqwa and consciousness and puts barakah in the work that we're doing here. And if you haven't already, go ahead and apply for a Ramadan transformation session. And then it won't just be a dua that you do in Ramadan, it'll be a dua that has a really solid plan behind it. And we can make it happen. Salam alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Until next time, may the peace, love, and blessings of Allah be with you always.